All right. Good morning, Oskaloosa and Mahaska County. Welcome to the very frosty edition of Eggs and Issues for this first time in February. So today we have Oskaloosa Mayor Dave Creutzfeld, Mahaska County Supervisor Mark Grunendijk in the house, and we're going to be talking local politics, local issues. So get your questions ready for these gentlemen. They'll be here for the next hour to answer your questions. So we'd like to thank Smoky Row Coffee. When you get a chance, stop in there. I know that we sure wish that we were there today and enjoying life as we had known it before. But for now, we have this opportunity and we'll make the most of it. So thanks to Smoky Row, Midwest One, for providing that coffee for today. And we're going to get right to the questions, and we'll actually open it up for Mayor Creutzfeld to make a comment first and open it up, and then we'll have Mr. Grunendijk next. So here we go.
Well, thank you very much, Ken. You started off by thanking Smoky Row for the coffee, and I also want to thank the Chamber for the opportunity to be able to just get together again and talk about local politics. We appreciate the rebroadcast that takes place and just kind of getting the word out as to what's happening with the city of Oskaloosa. We've had the pandemic thing going on, and it's been locking people down in their houses and constricting the way that they do things. But there's also, a city cannot just sit still. And so we've been doing the basics of blocking and tackling that cities do. And then we've been pleased by some of the development that has taken place in the last year. As is usual, if you were going to Smoky Row, you would expect to see the Oskaloosa Today handout that we do. And so, Ken, if you could bring up slide number 1. This is the list of accomplishments that we have with the city of Oskaloosa. Along the left-hand column, we use the same format as we did in the prior years, talking about the construction of the YMCA being built, and going finally from the planning stages to actual construction going on. It's a bit of a challenge to get out there, but that's a lot of building if you want to drive by and see where they're at so far. And so we've been doing, street, curb, and gutter replacement. We've been doing bridge replacements. We've been doing improvements on the park. We were proceeding with the improvements to the historic downtown. So we'll be doing facade improvements over on the south side. It's always a surprise to me that how much we can get done. 27,000 feet of chip seal that got done the last year, and we'll probably do about the same amount the coming year. And then also, we're proceeding with some work that's going to be done on the A Avenue as far as converting that to 3 lanes. Then also, in the lower right-hand corner of that is the development that has taken place. And so, different from most years, we usually see about anywhere from $15 to $25 million worth of new development every year. This last year, we saw $40 million worth of new improvements. That goes into the tax base, and it makes life a little easier on all the residents. And so we're very pleased to have that kind of development taking place, especially during times of pandemic. If you could go to slide number 2. This one talks about some of the stuff that we've got going on that is being planned and coming. So I mentioned the facade improvement project. We're doing phase 3 of that. The YMCA, if you're not keeping up with that, that's a 90,000 square foot facility. $35 million project when you include the maintenance fund that is also being raised so that it can take care of any challenges that come as that facility ages. And then I also wanted to draw special attention to the Hotel Motel Tax. That is coming up for a vote on March 2nd. What that would do is change our tax from 5% to 2%, or excuse me, from 5% to 7%, adding another 2% on. This is paid by people who are staying in hotels and motels, with money being used for recreation and for tourism in Oskaloosa. So we're looking forward to that vote coming, and I think there's plenty of information out there that needs to be shared so people can make an informed vote. I have other things listed in here as well, the corridor improvements, Meadow Creek Subdivision, post office redevelopment that's taking place on the corner of A and Market. And so I look forward to hearing more questions regarding this sort of thing. And then finally, like we do every year, if you could bring up slide number 3. This is just a comparison we do every year that has to do with what the property taxes are for an Oskaloosa taxpayer, how it compares to other communities of our size and demographic, and then also just how much of your tax dollar is going to the various directions on the pie chart on the bottom. With that, I guess the last thing I would mention is that you may have noticed that we aren't wearing masks. Mark and I, before we went on the air, did the distance thing, and we are good as long as we don't lock eyes and start breathing towards one another when we speak. So with that in mind, I look forward to your questions, and I think it's a beautiful day to be having this sort of thing happen. Mark?
Thank you, Mayor Critchfield. Also, thank you for joining us this morning, and Oscar News for presenting this. And everyone wants to get up on a cold morning and come out and see what's going on with their local communities on the governmental side. So, likewise, the county has faced numerous opportunities over the last year dealing with COVID, starting in March, closing a lot of things down as things progressed. We're dealing with it now about a year into it. Learning more, hopefully, the government is about this virus and how it's changing. We've made some safety precautions and standards everyone in the courthouse, not only for the employees, but for the public as they come in to be served, because that's what the county is. It's a service-based organization. So we're trying to keep everybody healthy and work through the system as best we can. And don't give up. Hopefully this thing is over with and conquered, and vaccinations are here soon, and things are looking up. So, likewise, this morning, some topics we want to talk about.
And just a quick note, guys, can you grab the microphone and use it by any chance?
So, Ken, if you want to go to slide 6. This is a map of what the county has done in the past few years concerning the county roads that we are in jurisdiction of and required to maintain and operate, and the cost thereof. Slide 4, please, Ken. This is a project that has the city and the county working together, as well as the private sector. The yellow area is the part that we are working on prominently together to try and accomplish with the businesses, to see what's best for everyone involved, to get the traffic off of Southeast 15th and move it forward with the Southeast Connector. Slide 8 is a more specific route of what the Southeast Connector currently is proposed to look like in time. And part of this project is also applying for a RISE grant. And so we're working with the private individuals out there to develop a certified site that will allow us to work with the state for any additional infrastructure proceeds and funds, as well as also then when the state also has inquired from an outside business, that they will send them our way and give us a heads up that, hey, there's a potential here, and they might fit well into your site and your locality. This will also encourage our local businesses to have areas to expand, and so I think it's a win-win for all the way around. Again, this is a partnership between the county, the city, and the private business. And then lastly, on slide 7, Ken, this shows just a picture of where the new housing is going up in the county outside of Oskaloosa within the last 12 months. So it kind of shows us where the population is wanting to grow and build, and that keeps an eye on what we're doing with our road structure and everything else too. So just part of the summaries we keep up to date with to see how things might change on our road services and structures and demands. So again, thank you everyone for coming out on a cold morning. Hope you got some warm coffee and some hot chocolate, and look forward to taking your questions. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen. I have a question here that was sent in by Joe Warwick. And it says, how do you feel that Oskaloosa residents feel about Mahaska County suing the city of Oskaloosa over the airport? County using portion of money from the city residents to sue, while the city is using a portion of city residents to defend the suit. Once again, Joe Warwick.
Okay. That's a good question, Joe. Thank you for asking. I think a lot of the residents of Oskaloosa don't realize they're paying both sides of that lawsuit. That you know, residents for the most part trust their government to do things in their benefit, their behalf, and so they get surprised from time to time when they find out that there's money being spent in such a way as perhaps they're not in favor of. Certainly, it grates on the nerves of me that to think that we had an agreement that was struck back in the day, and all we had to do was keep it going. But of course, with lawsuits, changes in opinion, that sort of thing, it can happen. It seems to me that the resistance to the airport is coming primarily from the agricultural sector. And so it would make sense to me that if a person were launching a lawsuit, you would be using the rural basic fund instead of the general basic fund to do it, to pay for those legal fees. But again, I'm not a county supervisor. It's just as mayor, that's the way I would do it. So I don't think the residents are too fond of the idea, and they wish it would stop.
So that's a great question, Joe, but I think we need to collect the wording of it. The only portion the supervisors have asked the courts to do is determine whether this is a fair, valid 28E. If you go back in the minutes of the supervisors, and I believe it's in June of 2018, is when the opportunity came to appeal a lower court's decision of this being a valid 28E to the Supreme Court. The supervisor did so on a 2-to-1 vote. Manager Mike Schrock was at the meeting, interested how much this money was going to cost. It had been a straight, simple, forward appeal. At that point, the county had spent zero amount of dollars on lawyer bills. Zero. After we appealed to the Supreme Court, the cities of Oskaloosa and Pella filed what they call an interlocutory appeal, and they actually sued the county for damages, saying that we delayed the airport, that they were suing us for damages. And so for the next roughly 2.5 years, we consistently asked, what damages are you claiming? And repeatedly in the court system, verbally and in writing documents, written documents, they come up with zero. They can come up with no claims, but the appeal continued. And during this whole process of getting ready, preparing for a jury trial, a lot of documents were filed in court, and a lot of claims were made that they could do this, i.e., the cities could do this because let's look at how the Hawaii Constitution does it. Let's look at how Hawaii law is. And so when we're looking at every other state, the county had to spend money to prepare itself to defend. No, Iowa Constitution, Iowa law is different than Hawaii. Iowa Constitution, Iowa law is different than Virginia's. And so we spent a lot of time looking at every other states and a lot of other court cases outside of Iowa instead of focusing on Iowa law, Iowa Constitution, Iowa court cases. That's where a lot of that money was spent, and nothing was gained from it. I believe it was last December, the county actually, through their attorneys, filed in court to get those cases dismissed, and continually showed the court over and many times of how many times the city said, we have no claims. It's the county taxpayers, and that means everybody had to pay to file this in court and put the pressure on the city's attorneys to finally admit that we have no claims, there's no damages to get the case dismissed. And so now it is appealed to the Supreme Court of whether this is a valid 28E, because there is a lot of decisions. If you look at the law, there's a lot of things in there that the supervisors cannot do if this 28E is valid. And we asked the court how we could proceed under this manner. And if you look at the last ruling, Judge Cronk said they were not going to address those issues. So it does put us in a bind. And so that's the short of it. The county did not sue the cities. The cities actually sued the county. We're just asking the Supreme Court, if this is a valid determination, then how do we proceed considering your previous court rulings and the law is written, how do we move forward with some of these issues? So thank you, Joe.
So this is a Ken question, so just so we know, I'm going to follow up on last year's question that I posed to both of you while we were able to be inside of Smoky Row. How much money has each entity spent on that particular court case?
And I guess I'm going to answer the same way I did last year, that's still a moving target. That while I don't have the number in my mind, it is more than I would have liked, and I think more than anybody else would have liked as well. In my opinion, this is a tremendous waste of time, but it is certainly available as a number that if we ask the city manager's office, the clerk of finance would be able to come up with that probably within about a half hour or so.
That's a great question, Ken. I think during last year's election campaign and debates, I think it was around $500,000 the county had spent through October. I don't know how much money it took to finish closing it out to get that lawsuit dropped. I'm going to say since we've been able to appeal this, I'm going to say roughly $10,000 or $15,000 to appeal this to the Supreme Court. So. Yeah, I think the taxpayers roughly had to spend over $500,000 to defend a lawsuit that had no claims, and roughly I think we're going to spend we've already spent $15,000 now moving it forward to the Supreme Court asking us how we can proceed. Likewise, the other lawsuit dealing with EMA and 911, I know last year it was at $300,000. I know we had to spend more money on it again to get a second ruling, and so again, this is money that if we would just thought through this and people communicated and understood versus this is the way we want it, it could have saved the taxpayers a lot of money. So it's unfortunate, but when there's a lot of opinions and thoughts, sometimes it takes an outsider to make the final decision. Thank you.
Alrighty, we're going to move on to another question, and I really want to thank Andy and Allison McGuire, who are up this morning, and they're helping to filter and text me these questions that are coming in from you. So here's one from Glenn Knox, and he's asking, are there any plans to hard surface the west portion of the Stadium Drive from where it currently stops to where it connects to Kirby Avenue and onto 432 or Old Highway 163, ? We have some of the best sports facilities in the state, but you come into town and Highway, let me see, 163 route to the ball fields, soccer fields, and the football stadium leaves a lot to be desired. Once again, from Glenn Knox, Oskaloosa.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Glenn. I know that this is going to be something Mark needs to react to as much as I do. The stadium and all those facilities reside in the Oskaloosa city limits, and there's a few hundred feet of that gravel road that could be paved if we wanted to. However, it connects up into roads that are located in the county. And so from our perspective, it wouldn't make much more sense for us to pave that a few hundred feet more if the county wasn't going to do their piece of it. So for the city of Oskaloosa's perspective, we stand ready, but we don't have any initial plans.
Likewise with the county, it's been my understanding that I think the city paved just on the west side of the elementary school a year or two ago, and dealing with the chamber and people like that, that was hopefully to be the desired route, hoping it would force more people when they coming into town or leaving the soccer fields in the afternoon days to get them more to go uptown to the restaurants and shops and things like that to spend more money in our area versus sliding out the backside and being gone. So, I mean, we can have more conversation about this, but I thought that was my impression of why we're doing what we're doing, I guess the last time we talked about this. So, great question, Glenn. It's all about trying to get people where we want them to go and staying as long as they can stay. So I appreciate the question. Thank you, Glenn.
But that said, I think there's a very definite need for that road to be paved. That city of Oskaloosa wants to have a reputation as being top-notch with its facilities. And so in order to do that, you have to have top-notch infrastructure getting to it. The ability for people to get to it easily, and then also the feel as they come into those facilities. And so from my perspective as mayor, I really would encourage the county to give a lot of thought to working up a partnership with the city of Oskaloosa to let that facility be all that it can be. We really do want to see those roads paved. especially for the people who are participating in the activities themselves, the parents of the kids. That you're driving on a gravel road to take your kid to that facility. So we want to be nice to the residents as well as to the visitors.
Alrighty, and we have another question from Meredith Nenakoven, and she asks, is there a plan to bring back recycling?
Well, the city of Oskaloosa has recycling. That if you have a hauler, which I assume you do for the trash that is your household generates, then curbside recycling is required of that hauler to be offered. And so the history behind the curbside is that we used to have these public containers that people could bring their recyclables to. I sit on our landfill commission, as does Mark. And so what we were hearing from the haulers is that a lot of the recyclables were being picked up and then examined to see what was in the container, realizing there was contamination, and being taken out to the landfill and dumped. Primary cited was the existence of glass bottles that were put in there, but also just general trash, dirty diapers, if you can imagine. And so that was the reason for taking those out, was because there was a contamination issue, and then there was also a cleanliness issue, that it was an eyesore as the recyclables and other materials would end up outside of those containers, that they weren't being pulled fast enough. And so the reaction to that from the city of Oskaloosa and also the landfill commission was to find a way to be able to get those recyclables to be more pure. And the best way to do that would be with a curbside system, whereas the hauler who's picking up the recyclables has a chance to look at them before they're thrown into a commingled truck. And so if there is a problem, such as glass bottles being put in the recyclables, the hauler can handle it at that level and be able to address that with the household and say, hey, there are some things that are contaminating our load, and so that's, please, get that fixed going forward. So that's what's going on with the city of Oskaloosa. Now, the landfill commission is also proceeding with having a commingle container out at the landfill itself. Currently Midwest Sanitation has one that for drop-off, but that charges something I don't think the landfill would charge. And so there is some effort being made that way. But that's as far as it's going. But again, I would stress that if you're a resident of the city of Oskaloosa, you have recycling right at your curbside if you want it.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of changes. The landfill did have a contract with the recycling, and that expired about a year or so ago, and there was never a contract renewed. At the landfill, we are doing some recycling with electronics. I know, and Dave, you'll be more knowledgeable on this than I am. Thursday night, I was at a different meeting, and I know Dave, I think, to my understanding, there was some discussion on recycling again. But yeah, I believe there is a contract. If you do have a hauler, they are required to provide you a recycling bin to pick up recyclables. So I would definitely check with your hauler and check on your contract, what you signed. And I know there is more and more talk of things that the landfill can do. I know, and in addition to that, I think we're starting to talk maybe even about mulching. I'm not sure. I know it's been an issue with the city about where to go with their leaves and grinding pile and things like that. I know they're trying to work through, maybe with the landfill. So there is a lot of talk. There's been a lot of changes at the landfill over the last 6 months. We're working on ending the 2080. And just so everyone's aware, when we talk about the landfill, that is another 2080 entity that's made up of all the cities and the county within the county. So it's a large organization. Every political subdivision is required by law to have a municipal waste site for their residents. And so it's a joint effort there, and it takes a lot of conversation, working to see what everybody's needs are to try and get them fulfilled. So again, thank you.
And one other thing, I guess I mentioned glass as a contaminant for recycling, that is something that the Landfill Commission is working on right now. Is that we have been contacted by an entity that actually does only glass recycling. And so as we work our way through that, there's the ability anyway coming up that if you have glass bottles in your household, we'll come up with a way to be able to get that recycled as opposed to sending it out to the landfill.
All right, gentlemen, we have a question from Rob Taylor. And this is a question for Mark. Are the road project maps you presented available on a website for viewing? And what are the projected dates of completion?
So a lot of these projects, a lot of them have been completed, and it shows the cost value. I think what it shows is how kind of evenly we're trying to maintain the roads throughout the entire county. It's not located in just one quarter. Also, in the top left hand or northwest part of the county, you can see what's planned there in the green line from by Tainer to the county line. That is a project that we're going to use TIF money for, and we've already bonded for that, and we've just been took bids out, and it's on the agenda for Tuesday to actually accept the award. And so, and then the yellow lines from New Sharon to Pella is also projects that are planned here in the next year or two to maintain that road. That's probably those hard surface roads are probably one of the more traveled in our county as a county ownership. And so I think they receive over 2,000 vehicles a day. And so the other roads are planned or have been completed. If there's a number, if you look through like on the Bussy Highway from 163 going across the Des Moines River, I'm talking in the southeast, or excuse me, the southwest quarter, the G71 HMA pavement from the 163 was in green, was completed roughly 5 miles, $4.4 million of a complete road. We pulled up the old highway, put down a new base, and 8 or 9 inches of blacktop. And then the yellow there is what's planned. And so the west part of the Bussy Highway also needs to be completed. So basically, the understanding, the yellow is what we're looking at, the green is what's been completed, and then you can also see the cost of maintenance on those maps of what it takes just to maintain those sections of the road. So feel free to contact the engineering department or the supervisors for the road needs. Again, we are limited on what the state allows us to tax to maintain the roads, so we're limited on funding. And basically, it doesn't sound well, but we're always behind on roads. It seems like we're the cleanup crew on roads. There's always a demand. There's always more pressure. The housing things are changing. Businesses are changing, and which is a good thing. But I know when you ride down them and it's a little bit rough, it can be agitating as well. So we're doing the best we can. If you have any ideas and suggestions how to make them better, I know we're trying to change things and get a plan in of how to keep the ditches cleaned out better, and do more of that to get the hydrology away from the road base to keep the foundation firmer. And so we also are making changes to the policy of our grader operators to try and keep more of a crown in the roads. And so all this takes time. And I know in the meantime, when you put more crown in the roads, you bring up more dirt. If it rains the wrong time, you've got mud. And so everything is timing, everything is work. And so we just appreciate your patience as you work with us through all this. So again, thank you.
All righty. So once again, I'd like to actually thank, I didn't mention that this is actually hosted technically by the Mahaska Chamber and Development Group, and we really thank them for helping make this possible. So I'm getting questions in. This one's from the McGuires, who are helping filter all of these questions in. And this one's for the mayor. How does the hotel tax rate proposed compare to other areas, and are there specific projects in mind for the additional revenue? And this is from Kurt Keogh, I think.
Okay. Thank you very much for asking. I appreciate that. That there are a number of other communities that have a hotel motel tax that are in the 7% range. And so if you want a quick list of them, we've got Albia, Centerville, Sheridan, Fairfield, Grinnell, Knoxville, Newton, Ottumwa, and Pella, all that are doing a 7% rate. We're at 5%. And so there's the opportunity to match what the other communities around us are basically charging. Who pays the thing? Anybody who's staying in a hotel or a motel. So it's going to be folks that are visiting the city of Oskaloosa. And so the idea is to create a bit of a virtuous cycle with this, that if we are using the hotel motel tax to fund tourism and entertainment, maybe that's what's the reason that they're coming to visit the town in the first place. So what are the things that we could use? One of the thoughts that's out there was a presentation that we had, probably about probably a half year or so ago, by the folks who did the alley that's over next to Smoky Row. And they were saying, how about if we do another alley like that? And so where would you do it? Well, if you've been to Tasso's, there's an alley nearby. And so that is what we're looking at. And so the hotel motel tax money could be used for that. We can also use it for anything else that draws people to town. So think about entertainment space, any development that we would have for being able to do more entertainment downtown. You can also do parking lot improvements. You could also use it towards the purchase of live entertainment, such as live music. And so it's pretty wide open what you can use that on, but the whole idea is to put a little bit more tiger in the tank as far as our entertainment and tourism efforts. Currently, we have 5% of it dedicated to MCRF. That wouldn't change. This is just the additional 2% that would be freed up for additional efforts to improve the tourism and efforts of entertainment in the Oskaloosa area.
All right. And so we have a question here for Supervisor Grunendijk. This is from Mark Neff. Where is the county at with the construction of the radio communication towers?
Okay, thank you for the question, Mark. I think through the lawsuit we found out actually this was supposed to be a 911 board responsibility. And so through all the confusion and mishaps over the last 4 years, the supervisors have taken this on. And I would like to note, it's probably beneficial to all the taxpayers that the supervisor did that, because as you know, if a municipality signs contracts that don't have authority to sign, again, that creates other confusion and problems, and basically they will be void as well. So the supervisors did take on the county-wide project. We have accepted the bids for the tower starting they can start building as soon as March 1, I believe, and it's hopefully be completed by June or July 1st. We have submitted a bid to purchase the last tract, and that would be for the tower site for the Oskaloosa area. And so we will know more around February 22 whether that bid has been offered. That has been a process to find the tower site. We found an appropriate site. Unfortunately, it was owned by a different municipality or political subdivision, and so there's processes and laws that need to be followed as you try to transfer that title to someone else, and so we are near that end of that completion. That being said, on that site too, we've got the soil boring done on that site. As the 163 collapses were going through last summer with the 4-lane highway, we got concerned about what's underneath there at a deeper level for mining. So we actually hired the mining crew or the drilling crew to come back and bore down to like 120 feet to make sure there was no voids underneath there, that nothing would collapse. And that boring sample came back positive. And so we are moving forward on that site. And the project has been awarded, the towers have been awarded. The first 25% of the payments have been sent out. And so once we get this last site contract signed, we have to go through some more environmental studies with the, like for instance, Indian tribes. I know that's been with the COVID, they're using that as an excuse to delay things as well, but we're hoping to move it forward. This needs to be complete. It's drug on long enough. It's been difficult to find sites concerning you have to be so distant from the cemeteries, from artifacts, from historical buildings, from parks, and so it's been a challenge just trying to find the site around Oskaloosa. But once things hopefully hit this spring, it goes up pretty quick. Once the towers are up, Raycom says it will not take long to hang the equipment on the towers, and so hopefully it goes fast here this spring. So again, thank you, Mark.
I'm just going to follow up with that, Mark, real quick. So do we have an actual date that they'll flip the switch and they'll be on the new system, something that we can kind of mark on a calendar as a benchmark?
You know, there's biweekly reports or calls with Raycom between our consultants, and Jamie Robinson sits on those. No, I don't think there's been a definite time period, but I know the towers are hopefully be up by, I believe it's by July 1. And Raycom has told us it will not take long to hang the equipment. And so it should go fairly quickly once the towers are up. So, again, thank you.
All right. So we have another question. Let me see. So this is also from Kurt. What's the status of the wastewater permit updates, and is a funding mechanism in place for expected upgrades?
Hi, Kurt. Thank you for the question. Yes, this is an ongoing thing ever since DNR did their magic telling the city of Oskaloosa we needed to upgrade our wastewater facilities. We've been at this for probably about 7 years now. The quick answer is yes, there is a funding mechanism in place. If you remember, the DNR came and said, okay, the city of Oskaloosa has a couple of problems. One is that they have a tremendous amount of leakage in their system, inflow and the I&I stuff that needs to be fixed. And so we've been going around town digging up pipes and getting those fixed. Then we also have a problem with our wastewater plant, that it's not up to spec, and so we need to build new. And so at the time, the estimate was around $26 million, and now it's climbed up to between $30 and $36 million. And so this is expensive stuff. The question you asked is there a funding mechanism in place? The answer is yes. So if you can imagine having the situation handed to you where you know you're going to have to spend huge money in about 10 years, you have a choice. You can either start saving money now, and then that way you're accumulating cash and you don't have to borrow as much money going forward, or you can say, nope, I'm going to just keep all my rates as low as they can be for the near future and then slam something through when it comes time to build that plant. The City Council has chosen to take the former action. Namely, we are doing rate increases. We're doing an 8% increase on wastewater this year. And it'll be 8% next year in our projections, and it gets looked at every year. But for our purposes of planning, we like to do a 2 or a 3-year plan in order to figure out, okay, what is the appropriate amount of money given the amount of cash we're trying to save. And so the plan is that in the next few years, we will have to get that plant up and running. 2027 is what's in my mind, that we've got to have the thing done. And so construction takes place a couple of years before that. And so as that funding mechanism comes together, we will be using SRF funding. We will also be using some bonding revenue funds for that as well to get that thing built. But boy, it is no fun. And you know as well as I do that when you get that water bill, that, oh boy, here comes another increase again. So fortunately, we can point at the water, which is separated from wastewater, and show that there was no increase this year in the rates. That I sit on our water board as an ex officio member, and so the reports that are coming in with the increases in efficiencies that we have, that there's no need to do any kind of a rate increase, even though we are seeing expenses rise for things such as wages and for health insurance. And so, long answer to a short question. I hope that does it.
All right. We return to Mayor Creutzfeldt for this question. This one is from Mark Neff. How will the recent court... I'll get a little better here. How will the recent court rulings between the EMA and the Board of Supervisors, if indeed the ruling stands and no legislative action is taken, affect the cities within Mahaska County in regards to emergency services and the general funds?
That's a tremendous question. We're trying to work that through right now. We're still trying to gain an understanding of what all that exactly means. Some of the projections that the city of Oskaloosa is seeing is anywhere from $350,000 to $500,000 of additional expense that we would see in our general fund. General fund is a tax rate that is capped, and so we're at our top now. And so it's new expense that would come to the city of Oskaloosa. I spoke to this at one of our city council meetings many months ago, talking about how that could have the impact of reducing the number of police officers we have, the services with the fire, services with library, all sorts of impact that it could have. And so, at this point, we're still gaining an understanding. The deeper question, I think, is what is it we're trying to accomplish here? So if you pull the lens back a little bit, the whole idea behind the way that the tax was created, where the county, it was county supervisors who brought the idea to the commission, said we can be more fair with this. The idea is that everyone pays what they should for emergency services. And so the county said, what we will do is we will come up with a tax that goes countywide. So the more taxable value you have, the more you pay for emergency management, as opposed to breaking it down so much per city and so much for that incorporated area. And I guess that is where the agreement, again, I'm not on the commission, but from what I understand of talking to folks who are on it, that was where their mind was at, was trying to come up with what is fair for all of the taxpayers in Mahaska County. And so that shared vision is the thing that is starting to become scarce. If there was the willingness of all of the entities to work together and kind of blur those lines of saying this is our responsibility, this is your responsibility, and instead say we are responsible for serving our taxpayers in Mahaska County, working cooperatively, I think we would have a much better relationship amongst ourselves in terms of governmental entities, but I think also the taxpayers would also have a better feeling of the way their government is performing. And so that shared vision, and also that sense of, people say, well, the government needs to pay for this, the government needs to pay for that. And I'm one of those folks that anytime I hear the word government, I think that says me, because it's my tax money that's going into it. And so if we expect government to pay for something, understand that that's your checkbook that's involved. We're just the conduit for getting it done. And so what I would like to do is be able to come to some sort of mutual agreement, big picture if you will, as to what is the fairest way to handle the cost of emergency management in the county. Now the recent court decision puts everybody back at the table. Hopefully it's back at the table to discuss about, well, what is it that we were trying to do at the time that was handled in such a manner that it was clumsy. So with that in mind, hopefully it doesn't have a big impact on the citizens of Oskaloosa, but as it stands right now, it could.
Thank you, Dave. I do have a few comments. Dave, you mentioned what the supervisors did in the past. Let's just be clear, 911 is another created 2080 entity. And so every political subdivision, i.e. every city and county in this county and then in the state of Iowa, is required to basically focus a lot of their resources on public safety. That is why, if you look at court case after court case after court case, the cities are allowed an $8.10 levy, and it's mainly for the increased public safety services city residents should receive over rural residents. So that being said, 911 is a choice by every political subdivision of whether you want your citizens to be able to pick up the phone and dial 911 and receive a dispatch center, to have a live person answer the phone and ask what your needs are, and then send out the appropriate response. That agreement was signed in 1988, and another one that's basically identical was signed in 1991. It worked smoothly until 2015, when the 911 director was getting ready to resign. Jamie Robinson came to the 911 board and said, hey, I can do this for you, and I can put it on the county levy, and it'll free up your city's levies to do things that you ever want to do with everything else. Unfortunately, the law does not require or give him the authority to do so. And in fact, the minutes will actually show, as in the supervisor's minutes, it will show the supervisor had no intention of changing the funding formula. In fact, it's in one of our meetings. I actually asked the two sitting supervisors with me, was with part of this at the time, Willie Van Welden and Mark Dolan, and I actually called Mike Vandermolen before the meeting to see if that was his intention, and all three replied no. So there was a formula that worked from 1993, 1994, I believe you were on the 911 board at the time when that formula was designed. And it worked until 2015 when we found out things were going on that they had no authority to be doing. So it was a big discussion, a good discussion last Thursday night at the EMA 911 meeting. And actually in 2017, EMA's lawyer itself actually told the EMA board the fairest way to do 911 is per capita. And so it's not coming from the Board of Supervisors. It's coming from a lot of other entities. It was coming from their own attorney at the time. And so we've got just a lot of moving parts that what is fair. You know, there's been another court case in another county is dealing with ambulance service. And I guess there's a law that actually calls it inequitable justice. Is when you push off your responsibility onto a different taxing entity for your gain. And so it's a lot of conversations need to take place. There's we offer different ways of funding this thing by usage, per capita. And so I think, most entities do it all by per capita. So I guess that's where we're at with it. It worked that way for 25 years. And so we'll just see how the discussions continue to proceed. So thank you.
Alrighty, and I have a question from Tom Height, and this is for Mark. So why would you remove Catherine Call Goodman from the Solid Waste Commission after the landfill had one of its most productive years under her leadership?
I think thank you for the question. I think that was a decision from the full board. I'm not sure productive years. We've been over the finances. I think the landfill netted $18,000 last year, gross. So it's everybody's opinion how smooth things are running, and it's up to every political subdivision how they make their appointees. So our board made our decision, and that's where it's at. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm looking to see. My questions are slow to come in. So I know I have one from Justin Spencer. And he asks, he goes, what is the city and or county doing to improve infrastructure aside from cheap contracted chip seal streets? So we'll toss that one to you gentlemen.
Okay. I should have probably mentioned this earlier, that the handout that I referenced at the very beginning, we flash the thing up on screen and then it's gone, and you get to see our faces for the next while. The handout is also on the city's website. So if you go to oskaloosaiowa.org and then go to city government, and then under there is a heading for the city council, and it'll list my name, Mayor Dave Kreutzfeld. If you click on my name, you will see the handout for the State of the City handouts that have been done for the last number of years. 2021 is included on that. So in there, we talk about the sort of construction that's going on. And so when we talk about infrastructure, boy, we're pouring a lot of money into wastewater. And so you've seen plenty of streets and yards being dug up for that. The water department, likewise, has been aggressively going after the leaks that have been in the system for a number of years. And we're not to the point where we've got them all, but boy, we're sure making a heck of a lot of progress on that. Tremendous efficiencies in the last couple of years. You mentioned chip seal. Back about 10 years ago, Oskaloosa had the philosophy with streets that you build a street, you take care of it as best you can, and in about 10 or 15 years it's going to be pretty busted up and you're going to need to do repairs on it. And then you fix that street, make another new street. City manager came to the city council about 10 years ago and said, I would like to change that philosophy. Instead of pumping our money into fixing busted streets, why don't we instead put our money into maintaining the streets that are still in reasonable shape, but they're starting to show some wear? So we start sealing cracks, and we start finding ways to slow down that deterioration process. And so that's the way we do it. And so the chip sealing of streets, 27,000 feet of it, is all done with the idea that we are maintaining the streets' life so that we'll get more years out of them. We still have some that need to be replaced from time to time. And so one of the things I mentioned in here is the Meadow Creek Subdivision. There's a reconstruction process there. It's a little personal to me because I live in that area, and so also does one of our council members. That street, back when we had our change of philosophy, was in the bottom 2% of street construction condition, at that time. And so it has waited for 10 years for the opportunity to be reconstructed and deteriorated as you would expect in the meantime. And so what the city council has is the same thing that the city council or that the county will tell you, is that you have limited funds. And so you start looking for priorities and start looking for what investments are going to be the best you can make. And so in some cases, it will be, like what chip seal is, the maintenance of the streets that we have in such manner as we don't have to replace them. Buying time, if you will. Time is money. But there are also times where we have to, you just can't save it anymore. And so we need to develop a strategy to be able to go back and get the streets that have gone beyond the point where they can be repaired or maintained. And so, what is the plan? The plan every year we look at what's our general street condition and what are the areas that need to be given attention for street maintenance. But that's our philosophy going forward.
Sorry, Ken, can you repeat the question, please?
I think we were talking about, and I think this was actually a Mayor Cruiseville question primarily.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted, as I said, yeah, it's not the county's authority or jurisdiction to be within inside the city limits, so I don't have any details or thoughts on that. I would like to say though, the county is working with the city and reiterate with the private sector again to get the truck traffic at the best we can out of Oskaloosa, and especially on the southeast quarter where there's a multitude of truck traffic and demand. And so we are trying to do that southeast connector, and the county is working on trying to do a northeast connector. And so we are trying to work on things to try and get the truck traffic out of town and make it more efficient for the businesses, but also a lot safer for all the people involved, both the drivers of the trucks themselves and the pedestrians riding bikes, or the people in the cars around the big equipment. So we are taking a big step to try and get as much truck traffic out of town as possible in the near future.
Well,
so.
This question from Scott Skippers might pigeonhole into with what you're talking about right now. He asks, and I think this will be a good question for both of you, why are we planning to build new roads when we are behind on maintenance and rehab of the current roads? And that's from Scott Skippers.
Well, from a county's perspective, we are basically not building new roads. If you want to argue that the southeast and northwest are new roads, the southeast is going to have probably 3 miles of new road. I guess I'll let the mayor talk about it. But I guess from a county's perspective, I think it's a vital necessity to keep these trucks off of Southeast 15th. That's in a residential area. I do not think it's safe for anybody. And I think if we let the trucks continue to go down that road, I don't think it's going to be too many more years and that road will be shot. And so I guess from a city's perspective, they can decide whether they want to rebuild Southeast 15th and continue to have trucks in a residential area, or we can work together and try and get growth, access for growth outside of city limits, and encourage business growth, efficiency there. And on the northwest, we've had complaints for years about all the truck traffic on the gravel roads and the dust. And when you meet trucks on gravel roads in the summertime, visibility issues. Now you got safety issues. You got people walking on the road. So some of this stuff also concerns safety factors that we have to consider, and some of this is just growth of what the industry is doing in the Southeast Connector. There's been millions and millions upon millions of dollars invested by the businesses, and now I think it's time that we also invest for future growth in that area as well. So, thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to beat to death the stuff I already said regarding the street maintenance. When we talk about new roads, yeah, there's a little bit going on as far as the city of Oskaloosa is concerned. Something I did not touch on, I guess, is that 15th, back at the time we spec'd that thing in, I was on our city council at the time, and we actually spec'd in the pavement depth to be able to handle truck traffic. We weren't thinking about a bypass back then, and so we built the road for what was happening on it. We do have some ongoing efforts with the Iowa DOT. They would love to hand over jurisdiction of Highway 63 and then also 92 in the Oskaloosa city limits to the city of Oskaloosa. And so, to that end, they are giving us money to help go along that direction. Not all of that we need, but enough anyway. So we do have the project going on with A Avenue that's going to be changing that to a 3-lane. That should be happening in this calendar year. And then there was also some signaling that was involved with that deal as well. The original plan was that we would have a signal on the corner of C Avenue East and West, and North Market to be able to break up the traffic a little bit as it wants to stream through the downtown. And something that got cut out of that was also a traffic signal that was going to be on the corner of 15th Street and 63, going South Market, going south out of town. The idea on that was also to give the truck traffic on 15th the opportunity to get on to 63, giving it the right of way, and then also break up the traffic coming into town. If you've ever gone to Edmondson Park and decided you wanted to go back into Oskaloosa on Market Street, you find yourself waiting a long time to be able to get onto that road and head north. With the rumor and work that is starting on that bypass over on the southeast part of town, DOT has said, no, we're not going to pay for putting a signal in on 15th. And so that was taken out of the project. So we have an ongoing effort to analyze the traffic that's going on in the city of Oskaloosa and make it so that it's a better place to live. And so the efforts to cut down on the number of accidents and also quiet down the downtown. I think just about everybody is aware that we've got that effort going on. It is a slow process. It takes years, but the point is we're working along that line.
All right, gentlemen, we're short on time, so we have about a couple of minutes left. So, as I promised, as we started this, that I'd give you an opportunity to close out with any commentary that you might have, follow up, what have you, and then I'll close this out. So, whomever wants to talk first, we'll go ahead and start closing it out.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, everyone, for coming out virtually on a cold morning. The roads are kind of icy on the way in, and so you know, we are the representatives of the closest government you have to you. And so I think it's always beneficial for us to be able to come here and speak and share what we think, what we're doing as your governmental body, as your representatives of what the vision is that we have as one body and as jointly maybe working together also. So I would encourage you to be informed with your government, communicate with your government. As Dave will know, there's a lot of law, there's a lot of demands, and until you get into it, I don't think you really realize of how much the state legislature requires of your local government, and yet minimizes the resources to do things, and even in just various actions of how we do things, from budgeting to maintaining roads to taking care of mental health. Using different entities to work together. You know, a lot of laws on mental health continue to change. That's a county responsibility. We're working with 1015, and you know, during this pandemic time, finding drivers for the veterans was difficult, and so Mr. Warner sits on both of those on the 1015 transit. And we talked with Kurt at Veterans Affairs. We've got those two entities start working together, and that's going better and going smooth, and I think both parties are benefiting. And so, you know, as as time changes, demands change, and we just continue to look for ways to use your resources in the most efficient manner possible, and yet trying to explain of why we have to do things. And so it's always best, it's always enjoyable to come in, have people come into the office and ask why, and then you can have a sit down, have a conversation one-on-one, get the law book out, let them read the code itself of why we have to do things the way we have to, and hopefully understand better of what we're doing. Both the city and the county are created entities by the legislature. They are the sovereign, and we are just the created, and so we have to follow what the sovereign has given us to do. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to serve you. I appreciate your time. Thanks for getting involved and being involved with your government. Thank you. Hope you have a great day.
And I want to share Mark's appreciation for the folks who are tuning in. When you get into public speaking, they tell you that there are a number of tricks you can play on yourself to calm the flutters in your heart and the knot in your stomach when you grab a microphone. Imagine your audience, if you would, all sitting in their pajamas paying attention to you. And I bet there's a fair amount of that going on right now. And so thank you for tuning in. We appreciate that. And I look forward to being able to come back to Smoky Row someday in the future, because I can also guarantee the coffee that I'm drinking is better than whatever you're making at home. It's good stuff. Along the line of government stuff, I've been at this for a while. I was on our city council for 14 years, and I'm now entering my 12th year as mayor. And what I've been educated on is the government works best when we don't draw the lines between ourselves. That if we have a shared vision, a strategic plan, if you will, that becomes the key to how we work together. I'm remembering a piece of advice from a while back that said, if you're wondering how to run your life, imagine, if you will, that you're at your funeral and as you sit there, what would you like the people to be able to say about you? Once you figure that out, you just work backwards to make it happen. Likewise with strategic planning. Cities, counties, schools. Oskaloosa has had a number of partnerships over the years. And it's all started with a plan, a vision, if you will, that says this is where we want to end up as a community. And so all hands on deck, what little part can you have in achieving that vision? So Mahaska County has a vision for what they want to be, I assume. Oskaloosa has some plan as well. And so we hope to be able to share in the vision in such a way that we don't compete with one another, we actually cooperate. And so as we, the people, we, the government, work together towards a shared vision, what the mayor of Oskaloosa should be doing, and I try to do, is to make sure that the community is as good as it can be, a place that has a small town charm and feel to it, but yet is safe and progressive. And we have some great business partners for doing that. And we have you. You're the folks who voted us into office. You're the folks who want us to act. And so I thank you for the opportunity, the privilege. And as Mark said, look forward to hearing from you as to what your ideas, what your perspectives are. And as we get out of this pandemic thing, getting back into a community that is able to bring back some of the energy that we've been missing this last year. So thank you again to Oski News and to everyone, the Chamber, for the opportunity this morning. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
All right. Well, I'm going to close this out for us. So there's a whole list of folks that help make this happen. I know that the office crew is pretty small, but really, I mean, we have to thank the Mahaska County Chamber and Development Group for being the sponsor of this. We also want to thank Andy and Allison McGuire, who have been feeding me questions that they've been reviewing as they come in. We want to thank Penn Central Mall, of course, KIC and Oskaloosa News. We're invading their space here. Also, my wife has been running the camera, so thanks to Ginger Alsop for taking care of that. Midwest One for sponsoring the coffee and bringing it in. I know I had my cup of Smoky Road coffee this morning. It was well worth the wait. So once again, I'd really, really like to thank Mayor Dave Kreutzfeld, Supervisor Mark Grunendijk for coming in and being a part of this. It's never easy when you're in leadership. That seat gets pretty hot at times. So we'd really like to thank them for coming in. We'd like to thank all of you for coming and watching this morning, taking it in on MCG Channel 7, over on the Mahaska Chamber's Facebook page, on Oskaloosa News' Facebook page. And we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks when we have the legislators back here for, well, their second set. So in 2 weeks, we hope to see you at 8:30 in the morning here on these same outlets. Until then, have a great Saturday.